couple days ago, someone asked me, how do you fix stuff if you don't have a Fluke? Because I made a video specifically on checking address lines using a Fluke 9010A and oscilloscope. And one of my viewers pointed out very correctly that not everyone has a Fluke. They're very hard to find now and extremely expensive if you can find them. They weren't when I bought them, but you know, time has changed. But they're really useful tools. So in this video, anyway, I use the Fluke to constantly cause a read or a write to happen on a certain address. So I'll set the addresses to all zeros or all ones for the bits that I'm interested in checking.
So
play this real quick.
What I do here is I go to my Fluke and I just read at an address. So we're going to do read at 400 because that's the first address on that ROM, and all the address lines will actually be 0.
Address 400 hex in binary is actually 1 followed by 10 zeros, and the 2708 only has 10 address lines. So all of its address lines are zeros. It never sees that top one. That's part of the address decoder circuit that sees that.
But it's actually address 0 from addresses 0 through 9. All those addresses are 0. And the opposite would be
read 7FF.
Their addresses A0 through A9 are going to be all ones. Okay? All those bits are going to be ones. But what you want to do is you want to read and you want to loop. So I did a read at 400 looping. Okay? Now let's go back to our oscilloscope, and we want to actually go ahead and we need to measure the chip select when that goes on, because that's.
So I'm just gonna go through here to where you see where I actually measure it. There it is. There's I'm measuring it.
3, 2. Oops.
So you can see you can do that, and that's really useful. And the reason that you can do that with the Fluke is because the Fluke acts as a CPU, and you can actually tell the Fluke to just constantly read from address. Well, someone pointed out to me that what happens if you don't have a Fluke and you like to do something like this. Well, you can simulate that too, because the Fluke is actually just replacing the program and the CPU in the board. But if you have a board, you could write a little program that simply constantly loops reading an address. So here's our Z80 program. First thing you have to do is you actually have to give it an address or an instruction to jump to when it resets. So at address 0, you actually want to put an instruction to just jump somewhere else into the ROM, past a special table that is dedicated just for stuff. Okay, let's leave it at that, stuff. So we can't use the first couple bytes of memory. We have to start somewhere else. So I just chose address 50 because that's well past the various vectors. So at address 0, we just say jump to start, and then start. We load the address that I was looping in the Fluke, 400H, into HL, because that's a special register on the Z80. And then we load. So this actually is not going to do any memory access except for the fact that the access of the ROM that holds the code. And then once it's in HL, this instruction, when you see HL within parentheses, that means load the memory address, whatever HL points to. So whatever address is in HL 400H, go to that memory address, so 400H, and load that contents into A. So that effectively does our read at 400. And then what I do here is I also do basically the same thing except for BFFH hex. That means H means hex. So BFF. And then that is actually a loop at BFF. Now in the video that I showed you just a few seconds ago, it was 7FF, but I actually chose BFF because it's easier to isolate things, because 7FF would be on the same actual ROM as 400 on that specific motherboard that I'm looking at. So you would see it transitioning between high and low when I probe on that ROM. So I changed it to BFF because that way when I probe a specific ROM, the output enable, any address is always going to be 0. And then I move over to the next ROM over, and when that one's being read, all the addresses are high. It just makes it easier to actually see that, in fact, to demonstrate what I'm trying to show. So, so we load that address into HL, and then we load the value that's stored at that address into A, and then we just loop it over, jump back to start, which just makes it happen over and over. That's the looping function that we had in the Fluke. So now all we have to do is we have to save it. I already saved it. and assemble and load. That creates a binary, and it's going to create it over here. And what we have here, if we just look at a hex workshop, this is what we program onto our ROM. Okay, this is all we have to do is program this onto our ROM, take that into our EEPROM programmer, and stick it in.
So today we're going to simulate what we did with the Fluke in another episode with the just writing a program ROM. So with the Fluke, I was testing address lines. You can test bus lines the same way by looping reading and writing to a certain address. For example, in the video that I had before, I was looping read at address, what was it? 400. And I was I wanted to see that the address lines were all, except for the one that is a 1, all low. And then I wanted to check the address lines to see if they would go high, so I wrote to 7FF, right? Because then they would, all the address lines, except for, you know, at least with 7FF, you know, you got the top, the top 3 of the most significant bit set, and then all the rest are set, and the only one that is not the most significant bit that's set low. But anyway, and someone asked me, hey, well, how could you do that if you didn't have a Fluke? Well, that test ROM that we wrote, right? So I wrote this test ROM so that it's a looping access in 2 addresses, 400 and BFF. Why did I choose 400? Because, well, I have to have something in the ROM, and so this is 0 through 400, or 0 through 3FF. This is 400, and this one is actually 800 to BFF. And so this one, whenever I access this one, I'm going to check the chip select, and when it reads, it's going to be, I believe I set that to be, yeah, it's going to be low, and then this one will be high. So by doing that, and I could have done it so that it, you know, it looped both of those, but then I'm going to see it flipping back and forth, because when I read it, it's going to be different times, it's going to be reading different bits. So this was just very easy for me to isolate it by having each, when this chip select, when this RAM is being read, it's reading this, it's going to be high, low, and this one's going to be high, basically. Okay, so let's do that. It's already fired up. All right, so we go the chip select for this pin. Or it's output enable, actually. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I use that term interchangeably. Okay, so we got it there, and then you all right, so there we go. You can see that. Now I'm going to go ahead and just choose an address line. They're all going to be 1s. And you'll see, oops, yeah, and this one it's low. So you see the blue line there is low. Now we'll switch it to the next ROM. So there we're in that ROM. We'll move over 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Output enable there. Oops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There we go. So when this one is being selected, this is when I'm actually accessing address BFF, which is going to be basically all 0s except for the topmost bit. So again, now I'm going to go ahead and just choose one of the address lines, and you can see it's high. So, and I can go through each of these, right? They're going to be high. Ooh, well, that's not an address line. My bad. That's why that one was not high. Okay. And just the same, I can go back to the other one. And every address line on this is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's going to be low. So low. Low, 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 low. And then I think this is not an address line. Yeah, it's not an address line. Low and low. Okay. So there you go. That's how you could test it. Address lines by just writing a little ROM that just basically reads from the addresses you want to test. Again, I chose all addresses that were basically all 0s and all 1s relative to this to whatever ROM they're on. You do the same thing with data. If you wanted to, test your data lines, you would do a looping write to an address. You write all zeros or all ones to an address, and then you would check the data lines that that you're testing.
Hello, YouTube users. Just want to take a few minutes to remind you that these videos take a ton of time to make. The average video takes, 15-minute video takes about 2 to 3 hours in recording and editing, not including time needed to actually research the topics we're going to discuss. And I'm very big on the free flow of knowledge and information, so these videos I do make available for free. However, if you'd like to support this, which I do encourage, if you got $1 or $2 or $3, consider becoming a Patreon sponsor at www.patreon.com/arcades. If you donate $1, I think I get like 50 cents. If you donate $2, I get like $1.50. If you donate $3, you get $2.50. But every dollar donated helps go to pay for my time, as I do have other things that I could do, like work overtime. But I do a lot to make these videos available and make them available for free for those who can't afford to support it. So if you do have the ability to support it, please consider coming by the Patreon site and making a donation, a monthly donation, which is whatever you want to do. If you do, you get access to the videos 90 days early, as well as you don't have to watch a stupid commercial at the beginning of the videos. But if you're thinking, man, $1, that's a lot of money, I can't afford that. Think of what $1 can buy you today. Not much. It can buy you a 9-volt battery. No. It can buy you a quarter of a 9-volt battery. Half of a large drink at Dunkin' Donuts, Baskin Robbins, not including tax. Get maybe a third of a roll of paper towels. Maybe one roll, I don't think, of maybe 90% of a roll of generic brand toilet paper. You're thinking, man, all right, I know what I can't get for a whole $1. What can I get for a whole $1? Well, if you like to go to the gun range, you can get 3 rounds of American Eagle 5.56 ammunition, if they're on sale, or 4 rounds of generic cheapo Remington 9mm full metal jacket, or if you're more into hardware, whole bag of 5 screws at your local Home Depot. Anyway, or you can support the creation of more videos. Everyone who was a subscriber gave $1 or $2. I'd have plenty of time every month to make it lots of videos. Anyway, enjoy the video. Take care.